Have you ever felt trapped in a cycle of toxic relationships or overwhelmed by constant anxiety that seems impossible to escape? Maybe you're wondering why you keep being drawn to people who hurt you, or why breaking free from harmful patterns feels so difficult. The truth is, these behaviors are often deeply rooted in past experiences and unresolved emotional trauma. In this video, we'll uncover the signs that you might be in a toxic relationship, how anxiety and emotional wounds play a role, and most importantly, how you can break free from this cycle and begin your healing journey. If you're searching for answers, practical tools, and a way to reclaim your inner peace, you're in the right place. Let's take this journey of self-discovery and transformation together. A trauma bond is far more than just a complicated relationship. It's a deeply ingrained emotional and psychological connection that forms in the midst of a toxic cycle. Imagine being caught in a loop where moments of cruelty, neglect, or emotional withdrawal are suddenly interrupted by acts of love bombing, affection, or even apologies. This back and forth creates a powerful attachment, not because the relationship is healthy, but because the brain begins to associate relief from pain with the very person causing it. It's like being stuck in quicksand. Every attempt to escape feels impossible, and yet the pull keeps you tethered. What makes trauma bonds so insidious is how they tap into our most primal need for safety and connection. For example, someone might endure emotional mistreatment or gaslighting because those fleeting moments of kindness feel like a lifeline. It's not love, it's survival. And yet, the emotional whiplash keeps the bond alive, leaving you questioning your self-worth and boundaries. But why does this happen? Why do we cling to something so destructive? This is where the concept of intermittent positive reinforcement begins to reveal its role in this painful dynamic. The cycle of intermittent positive reinforcement is like a psychological trap that rewires your brain without you even realizing it. Picture this: one moment you're facing emotional neglect, harsh criticism, or outright cruelty. Then, out of nowhere, you're showered with affection, compliments, or even gifts. This unpredictable pattern creates a powerful addiction, much like a gambler chasing the next jackpot. Your brain clings to those rare moments of kindness, convincing you that if you just try harder, the good times will last. But the truth? It's a carefully crafted illusion that keeps you hooked. This cycle isn't just random, it's a manipulative mechanism that exploits your emotional attachment and need for validation. Over time, your brain begins to associate the abuser's approval with relief from emotional pain, making it nearly impossible to break free. Think about it. How many times have you justified mistreatment because of a single good day? This isn't love, it's a conditioned response. And the longer you stay, the more your self-worth erodes, leaving you trapped in a toxic relationship. But why do people stay? What makes it so hard to walk away? Why do people stay in toxic relationships, even when the pain outweighs the joy? It often boils down to hope, a desperate belief that things will go back to how they used to be. Those early moments of love bombing, where everything felt perfect, create a false sense of security. You convince yourself that if you just work harder, set fewer boundaries, or please them more, you'll earn their affection again. But this hope is a double-edged sword, keeping you tethered to a cycle of mistreatment and emotional pain. Then there's the fear of abandonment, which can feel paralyzing. Many people believe their partner is the only one who can fix the very pain they've caused. It's a cruel paradox. The person who wounds you becomes the person you crave for healing. Add to that the shame of admitting the relationship isn't working, and it's no wonder people feel stuck. But here's the thing: confusing intensity for intimacy is part of the trap. Let's dive deeper into why these emotional highs and lows aren't the connection you think they are. One of the biggest traps in a toxic relationship is mistaking emotional intensity for genuine intimacy. The roller coaster of extreme highs and devastating lows can feel like passion, but in reality, it's just the cycle of abuse at work. Those moments of intense connection, when they apologize, shower you with affection, or promise to change, feel like proof of love. But real intimacy isn't about dramatic gestures. It's about consistency, safety, and mutual respect. If you're constantly walking on eggshells, that's not intimacy. It's survival mode. Think of it like this: a healthy relationship feels like a steady flame, warm and reliable. A toxic one, however, is more like fireworks, explosive, fleeting, and often dangerous. The emotional whiplash of being adored one moment and discarded the next creates confusion, making it hard to see the relationship for what it truly is. But why does this intensity feel so addictive? The answer often lies in the psychological impact of trauma bonds and how they shape your sense of connection. Let's take a closer look at how this dynamic affects your mental and emotional well-being. The psychological impact of a trauma bond runs deep, often leaving scars that linger long after the relationship ends. At its core, a trauma bond thrives on fear, anxiety, and emotional pain, creating a dependency that feels impossible to break. The constant state of fight or flight keeps your nervous system on high alert, making you hyper-focused on your partner's moods and behaviors. Over time, this erodes your sense of self-worth, leaving you feeling powerless and trapped in a cycle of emotional withdrawal and craving. What's even more heartbreaking is how childhood experiences often lay the groundwork for these patterns. If you grew up in an environment of emotional neglect, abandonment, or inconsistent love, your brain may have learned to associate pain with connection. This makes you more vulnerable to mistaking mistreatment for intimacy in adulthood. But here's the thing. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward healing. So, how do you identify the red flags of a toxic relationship? Let's explore the key characteristics that make these dynamics so damaging. Toxic relationships often follow a predictable yet devastating pattern. It starts with love bombing, grand gestures, intense affection, and promises of a perfect future. But once you're emotionally attached, the mask slips, and manipulation takes center stage. Gaslighting, blame shifting, and outright cruelty become tools to control and confuse you. What's worse, the abuser rarely takes accountability for their actions, instead making you feel responsible for their behavior. It's a relentless cycle that feeds on your low self-esteem and sense of shame. Abusive partners often exploit your empathy and desire to please, using your kindness against you. They know how to push your boundaries, leaving you questioning your reality and worth. For example, they might dismiss your feelings as overreactions, or accuse you of being too sensitive. Over time, this erodes your confidence, making it harder to recognize the mistreatment for what it is. But how do you know when enough is enough? The answer lies in recognizing the lack of change and the persistent emotional neglect that defines these relationships. Recognizing disrespect in a relationship can feel like waking up from a fog. It's those moments when their lack of empathy becomes undeniable, when they dismiss your pain, refuse to take accountability, or repeat the same harmful behaviors despite promising to change. You might find yourself forgiving over and over, hoping that this time will be different. But true change requires consistent effort, not empty words. If their actions don't align with their apologies, it's a clear sign that the cycle of mistreatment isn't going to end. The hardest part is accepting that forgiveness doesn't mean ignoring the problem. Forgiveness can coexist with boundaries, and sometimes the healthiest boundary is walking away. For example, if they continue to gaslight you or use guilt as a weapon, it's not your job to fix them. Recognizing this isn't about giving up, it's about reclaiming your self-worth. But why do so many people still feel trapped? It often comes down to the manipulative power of guilt and shame that are two of the most powerful tools in an abuser's arsenal. They use these emotions to keep you trapped, making you feel responsible for their actions or the state of the relationship. For instance, they might say things like, "If you really loved me, you'd stay," or "You're the reason I act this way." Over time, this manipulation chips away at your self-worth, leaving you feeling unworthy of love or incapable of leaving. It's a calculated strategy to maintain control while keeping you emotionally dependent. What makes this so damaging is how it feeds into your natural empathy and desire to fix things. You may find yourself over-functioning, trying harder, giving more, and ignoring your own needs in an attempt to make things right. But here's the truth. Their behavior isn't your fault, and no amount of effort on your part will change someone who refuses to take accountability. The key to breaking free lies in setting firm boundaries, which we'll dive into next. Setting boundaries is one of the most empowering steps you can take in breaking free from a toxic relationship. Boundaries aren't about punishing the other person, they're about protecting your emotional well-being and reclaiming your sense of self-worth. For example, you might decide to stop engaging in arguments that go nowhere, or refuse to tolerate emotional withdrawal as a form of punishment. These limits send a clear message: your needs and feelings matter, and you won't accept mistreatment any longer. But here's the hard truth. Sometimes boundaries aren't enough. When someone refuses to respect your limits or continues to exploit your empathy, the healthiest choice may be to remove yourself from the relationship entirely. It's not easy, especially when you're still holding on to hope, but clinging to the fantasy of who they could be only keeps you stuck. Let's explore how letting go of that fantasy and reconnecting with reality can pave the way for true healing. Letting go of the fantasy you've built around a toxic relationship is one of the hardest yet most liberating steps in the healing process. It's easy to cling to the idea of who they could be, the person they were during the love bombing phase, or those rare moments of kindness. But here's the thing, potential isn't reality. Holding on to this illusion only keeps you trapped in a cycle of emotional pain and disappointment. True freedom comes when you start observing their consistent patterns of behavior rather than their empty promises. Reconnecting with reality means shifting your focus inward. Instead of waiting for them to change, ask yourself, what do I need to feel safe and valued? This process requires courage and honesty, but it's also the first step toward reclaiming your self-worth. For example, journaling about their actions versus their words can help you see the truth more clearly. Once you detach from the fantasy, you can begin the journey of healing and building a life rooted in authenticity and self-love. But how do you navigate the grief and loss that often come with this detachment? The healing process after breaking free from a trauma bond is anything but linear, but it's also one of the most transformative journeys you'll ever take. The first step is recognizing that the relationship lacked true safety and intimacy. Two essential ingredients for emotional well-being. This realization can be painful, but it's also empowering. From here, the focus shifts to rebuilding your self-worth and finding security within yourself. Small steps, like practicing self-love through daily affirmations or setting aside time for activities that bring you joy, can make a world of difference. Healing also means seeking support, whether through therapy, trusted friends, or safe relationships. A therapist, for example, can help you process the grief, untangle the emotional knots, and develop tools for emotional regulation. It's important to accept that healing takes time and effort. It's not an overnight fix, but every step you take is a step toward freedom, resilience, and personal growth. Still, even as you heal, the pain of loss can linger. How do you navigate the grief of leaving someone who hurt you? Leaving a toxic relationship often comes with an unexpected wave of grief. Even though you know the relationship was harmful, the loss can feel overwhelming. You're not just mourning the person, you're mourning the dreams, the potential, and the version of the relationship you hoped for. This emotional pain can feel confusing, especially when paired with moments of doubt or longing. But here's the truth. Grieving is a natural part of healing. It's a sign that you're processing the reality of what was lost and making space for something healthier. What makes this grief so complex is the emotional attachment created by the cycle of abuse. You might miss the highs, even though they came with devastating lows. It's important to remind yourself that the pain of staying was far greater than the pain of leaving. Journaling, leaning on a support system, or even creating rituals to symbolize closure can help you navigate these emotions. But how do you ensure you don't fall back into the same cycle? That's where strategies for breaking the bond come into play. Breaking free from a toxic relationship isn't just about leaving physically. It's about breaking the emotional and psychological bond that keeps you tethered. The first step is no contact or, if that's not possible, setting strict boundaries. This means limiting communication to only what's absolutely necessary and avoiding situations where you might be drawn back into the cycle. Removing reminders, like photos, messages, or gifts, can also help you create emotional distance and start fresh. Another powerful strategy is self-reflection. Journaling about the relationship, focusing on patterns of behavior, and identifying your unmet needs can help you gain clarity. Therapy is another invaluable tool, offering a safe space to process your emotions and rebuild your self-worth. Surrounding yourself with supportive friends and family can also provide the encouragement you need to stay strong. Finally, focus on rediscovering yourself. Reconnect with hobbies, passions, and goals that may have been overshadowed during the relationship. Celebrate small victories and remind yourself that healing is a journey, not a destination. The more you invest in your own growth, the less power the past will hold over you. Remember, breaking the bond isn't just about letting go. It's about creating a life that aligns with your worth and happiness. Are you stuck in a cycle of toxic relationships and overwhelming anxiety? In this video, we'll uncover the signs of emotional trauma, how it impacts your mental health, and practical steps to break free and start healing. Learn how to set boundaries, let go of harmful patterns, and reclaim your self-worth. This is your journey to freedom and inner peace. Let's take it together.